Lucky you.
36 best
Tuned
holes in
into
golf.
Alternate Shots podcast,
Barney's Army.
where we talk about golf,
Sandy.
poker,
James Bond.
horse racing,
Double.
classic movies.
Zenyatta.
We have no script.
Down the stretch they
And
come.
we are glad you joined us.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Okay, Billy Regan, we are just thrilled to have a special guest. What timing and everything. We have Craig, none other than Craig Harmon, the best of all the four Harmon. Wouldn't you say, Billy Regan?
I don't know. We might want to get Billy back on here at some point. So yeah, for today,
Well,
Craig's the best.
I can guarantee you I'm not going down that road because I don't want my brothers to pick on me after the fact. So that's not happening with me.
Yeah.
Did any of them? I have two brothers. Billy's got a few. Did any of them pick on you growing up?
You know, we all picked on each other. It was equal opportunity picking on. Usually when we paired up, Dick and I always were against Butch and Billy. So it was the oldest and the youngest. And since Butch was a phenomenal athlete, you know, all metropolitan county, New York halfback. If we played football in the backyard, Butch would just hand the ball to Billy and then completely decked Dick and I as we tried to catch him. And that was in every freaking sport.
I was the oldest of four brothers, and I turned out to be the smallest, but there's certain advantage to age that kept me on top of the pile, at least till we became adults.
Yeah, then it all changed. Although Butch was always that way. There's a story we're playing at Oak Hill, and Dick and I are playing against Butch and Billy, and Butch gave up on the first hole. So we get to the eighth hole at Oak Hill, and a camera crew came out because the four Harmons were playing. And so all of a sudden, Butch was trying. He hasn't tried for 7 consecutive holes. They had 20-footer, and Dick is in his line, 20 feet on the other side of the hole. And Butch says, "Dick, you mind moving?" And so Dick gave him a look and moved about 1 foot to the right. And, you know, that's BS. Dick, better move or I'm going to go over there and I'll help you move, you know, stuff like that. And Billy and I said, "Geez, we're getting a fight here right on the eighth hole at Oak Hill." And Butch hasn't tried on a shot. Now there's a camera crew out here. But we had fun in those days, knowing each other's personalities. You know, Butch and Billy were the time bombs, and Dick and I were the calm people in the family.
Speaking to a camera operator, Billy Regan, that was gold. You guys getting into it on the eighth hole
Absolutely.
when they rolled out with the cameras, right, Billy?
Absolutely. Keep the
They were
cameras
there.
on.
They
Yep.
were there.
You have to tell Craig the really quick story about the shot you saw hit into.
It was
Story.
at Augusta,
That
fourth
tough
hole.
the tough par 3, fourth hole, Craig. Billy's standing behind the green, and next to him is a
But
handheld.
how does he think it's the sixth hole, the third hole? My God, Augusta National doesn't even know what the fourth hole is.
Once, get me down there. I need to learn more.
So we do a bunch of topics here. He's expert in horse racing and classic movies. I have the photographic memory of holes and stuff like that. Not so great about Oak Hill. We'll get to that later. But he's standing behind the fourth hole at Augusta, that tough par 3. And
Yeah.
Right next to it, right next to an ENG cameraman, and Tiger Woods, who's 16 or 17, nails one on the green and starts walking towards the green, twirling his club like a baton, just sort of like whistling a happy tune. He looked like the most relaxed guy in the world. And this cameraman takes the shot and then puts the camera down. I looked at him like, "What are you doing? This is what you want. This is gold walking at you right here." I'll never forget it. And he could have had it on video, but
Oh, that would be absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah.
So they don't know golf. They just are getting hired to take a picture.
yep,
That's
Yep.
where you should have come in.
exactly.
How many major winners? I know Jeff Sluman, but how many major winners have you worked with in your life?
Well, Jeff Fluman, I can take semi credit for him since I hit all the shots when he won the major. No, but over the years, you've given lessons to people, one-offs, two-offs, and things that would have won majors. A lot of them always wanted to have a lesson from a Harmon because of my dad, and eventually because of what's his name? Oh yeah, my brother Butch. And so then they would pick your brain to see what was going on. So they'd be one-offs from time to time that were always fun. It's always fun dealing with incredible talent. It's just a majestic thing as a teacher to watch some guy who can do anything you ask him to do and do it perfectly. So, you know, Butch can't teach anybody without talent. He can only teach people with talent, where the rest of us can teach everybody. We
So
always
there's a-
tease Butch about that.
So you're saying I got a chance?
Yeah, big time.
Me too. I just discovered Hogan's tip, the tucked elbow, and I'm 50 years into this game. Somebody could have told me that. Maybe your father could have told me that when I was a youngster at Winged Foot, but he didn't. But that was
Well,
my loss.
it's just a question of which elbow you were tucking.
How much information do you guys share as teachers and brothers?
You know, over the years, we've shared an awful good amount of information, things we learned from Dad, and down the line, things we learned from each other. And what has really come back, Billy and Bob, is it really came back to Dad taught us almost unequivocally. So the four of us never really invented anything new, although we thought we did maybe at the time. But it really comes back to Dad's teachings, his fundamentals have stood the test of time with all of us, really. It's amazing, actually.
It is, it's an incredible family and incredible tradition. And I saw somewhere, I read an interview where you talked about hiring a pro staff, and that your father taught you first to hire ladies and gentlemen, and then second to teach them how to be the club
Yeah,
pros.
golf pros, that was when I went to Oak Hill. I was 25 years old, and I had to hire 4 assistants and some shop staff. And I said, Dad, what do I look for here? He says, you hire ladies and gentlemen first, and you turn them into golf pros or shop staff members. And he said that on the premise that these people represent you, and you want them to be a lady or a gentleman. So way back in 1975, when I got the job at Oak Hill, that was my guide with anybody I interviewed of any kind. And if I checked on background, that's what I would check on, because they represent you. They're part of your brand. And I think that bodes well for any industry, any business, really.
Sure.
Well, I retired from Oak Hill
Oh, you're not,
2013 after 42 years. So I just couldn't last 50 years. Can you believe that, Billy and Bob? I came close.
Talk about that though. You know, we experienced a few pros, Tom Neaporta, your dad before him. It's a special character trait to last a few years at a golf club or a country club, let alone 42. How does it work?
Well, number one, you get paid pretty good. Number two, in my case, we had about 8 majors. So every few years you had a major to look forward to. So it made it a little bit easier. But the most important part of the equation is Oak Hill is a working class town with a world-class golf facility. And everybody was so appreciative to be there. So the members, it was an honor for them to walk on the premises. And it was a greater honor for me to be their golf pro. So there was just this love affair with people who love golf, and they worked their hearts out to do it. It was unique that they could afford it. So it wasn't like a real wealthy club, although it looks that way. They're really a working class club. And I just enjoyed that. And just regular people playing a good spot. Now we did have when my brother Billy worked for me many years ago, we had an outing where there was no dress code. And
Oh,
so
boy.
people were wearing short shorts and white socks up to their knees and t-shirts, and he's looking out over the putting green from our top steps of the pro shop, and he his jaw sticking out. Billy said, "It's the Toledo Mud Hens playing in Yankee Stadium today." I'll never forget that line as long as I live. Everybody looked like a bum per se, as by our so-called standards, but I'll never forget that line. He said, "Oh my God, that has never happened at Winged Foot, you know."
He's a
No.
little too sure in his comments. He's got some beauties.
Oh, yes, he does. Always has and always will. You're never going to top him.
So you grew up, you know, beyond the black cows and the Monday golf at Winged Foot, but you were around, as Billy said, you learned to be around famous people. You know, I'm sure Bing Crosby, you know, came in and out of your life, and Bob Hope and all these other guys. How did you deal with that, and how have you dealt with that at Oak Hill and the rest of your life?
Well, you know, growing up, we were always around so-called celebrities, as you would call them. But during the '59 Open, Ben Hogan had 2 cookouts at our house. And Bob Hope, when I worked at Lakeside Golf Club Hollywood, was a member there, and he knew my dad from Thunderbird Country Clubs. He'd come and say hi. So it became kind of normal. They weren't really celebrities to us. They were just, these are people in our house or having dinner. And so as a young person, you never thought of it. I've got this star in my house type thing. They were, you know, being around Ben Hogan when he's relaxing is a lot different than when he's playing golf. Because I did play golf with him when I was 18 years old. I think he said 2 words to me the whole round. And I
And they
remember
weren't
one
nice
hole.
shot.
Well, I'm not even sure he said anything. And this is a casual round with my dad and his buddy Art Butler. And I remember on the 15th hole, he kind of skied a tee shot, and I was walking in behind him. And I'll clean up what he said, but to himself now, I just was closing. God, I hate that freaking shot, but he didn't say freaking. And I never heard my dad swear, and I didn't think Ben Hogan swore. Oh my God, Mr. Hogan just said the freaking word. What's going on here? But he really said to himself, but I was right there. So, but they were abnormal people in the sense they were great, but we were around them when they were comfortable, we'll say. Bob Hope just walking through the shop was just something. So back in the day, my brother Dick and I, when we lived in Palm Springs, a course called Tamarack, we caddied there. And we had this Mr. Rockford guy who was a big producer in Hollywood. And we've had Milton Berle, the comedian, and Kirk Douglas, the great actor. And so I had Kirk Douglas and Mr. Rockford, and my brother Dick had Milton Berle and Rockford's little Rockford Jr. kid, who was a real weirdo. And after the round, I remember this. I'm going back a long time now, in the 60s. Kirk Douglas gave me $50, which was a gigantic fee back then. And I remember the younger Rockford producer came up to her. What do we give these kids? $5? And Kirk Douglas goes, "Hey, you give them 50." With that voice of Kirk Douglas. I'll never forget that as long as I live. Just it was right out of a movie.
Spartacus.
Hey, you give him 50.
Well, Hank Malfa, we heard from Hank when he started at Wingfoot in the early 60s. That's what a loop cost, $5 in the early 60s.
That's right.
Around the time. And he played for $5 Nassau. So in relative terms, that was a lot of money.
Yeah, right now when we play at the Meadows, we play for the caddy fee.
Wow,
That
so
means
you
you concentrate a little bit more than a $5 Nassau. I'll tell you that. You
Yeah.
start playing for the caddy fee.
Dougie Wines, right?
Wow, Dougie, my best friend. Yes.
Yeah, I knew him. I've known him since 1970, I think.
Well, how'd you meet him in 1970?
Boston College.
That's right.
And speaking of Doug, he said that I should ask you. He says Butch is now training or teaching or coaching Ricky Fowler, but you've got your hands on that as well.
Ricky went back to Butch this past September because Butch wasn't on tour, and all the pros need someone on tour. Butch is retired, and so he got this other guy who's a very good teacher, and he gave him 3 years worth, and he went from like 10th in the world to 180th. So then he finally went back to Butch, and basically I'm Butch's eyes here at the Medalist, where Ricky is a member, and just keep him on the same page, so to speak. But I'm doing Butch's bidding with Ricky. Let me put it that way.
Well, it seems to be working because Ricky's been much more visible in contention the last.
Yeah, he's had all top 20s really the entire year since we've been working with Butch, and they were a great duo back in the day, as all Butch's guys were. And then when Butch retired, he wasn't going on tour. Now he's 4 years now not being on tour, and they're so used to having people on tour with them versus let me fly to Las Vegas and
Right.
do something. And it's just interesting. So there's a Webb Simpson a couple years ago won the Varden Trophy, and Butch had been working with him. And Webb Simpson went to see Butch in Vegas 5 times a year because Butch wasn't on tour. So his agent gave me a call and said, "Geez, Webb would like to get Butch some wine. We know Butch really likes fine wine." So I called Butch up. I said, "Butch, one of your players," I didn't tell him who, "would like to get you some wine. You've been successful with him." He says, "Craig, I've got 500 bottles of wine in my wine cellar. I don't need any wine." And then I called the agent back. I said, "Butch doesn't need any wine." And the agent said, "Well, I know what Butch likes. He likes cash." And I said, "Well, I don't know how much they've made together, but I'm going to say $15 to $20 million. And so I'm not sure that Webb could stroke him a check that would impress Butch. But what Butch likes are replicas of trophies of things. So the guys who've won major championships with Butch basically gave a replica of the trophy. And the interesting thing with Butch, he's had 7 different guys win major championships under his tutelage. That's pretty interesting. And so anyway, the agent had to make up a replica of the Varden Trophy, which Webb Simpson won that year. which is the Varden grip and beautiful trophy. And so Butch sent me a replica picture of the Varden trophy. Jesus, one of my players' website just sent me a replica of the Varden trophy, blah, blah, blah. And then he sent me a picture of his wine cellar was the next picture. We did have about 400 bottles of wine in his wine cellar. And I sent him a picture of mine that's on my kitchen counter that holds 6 bottles. But he loves the little replicas of things, which he's earned, Butch has. And that's a very cool gift, really, from Webb Simpson. Butch really appreciated it. Again, what I said earlier, you were probably surprised that Butch has had 7 different people have won major championships.
Yeah.
And Billy would say Butch has won 9 in his mind, but he really doesn't play in them. He can't finish a tournament. Yeah, but there isn't any place like it that I'm aware of. Oak Hill has a tremendous heritage of not too far off of Wingfoot's, but it's just not the same. They didn't have Craig Wood as a pro and Claude Harmon as pro. Craig Wood's Masters U.S. Open champion, and Dad won the Masters, and on and on and on. It's just an incredible legacy. When you remember Wingfoot, you're really walking on hallowed ground in the most beautiful way. It's just fantastic.
And look at
That's,
though.
when you stop and think about it, it becomes even more incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think if you're a member there, you're very proud. You have to work hard to get there. But everywhere you walk around the club, there's a history that's fantastic, really. Love it.
Oak Hill has that for it too, because every great golfer has played Oak Hill because of the spacing of the 3 U.S. Opens. Now you're going to have the 4th PGA, the 2 amateurs, the Ryder Cup, the senior. All those people have walked those 355 acres too. So it's pretty hallowed. I think it's a mecca. In my opinion, it's a mecca of major championships in brisk weather. This month.
Well, it'll be brisk here next week. I think the high is about 62, and you could get a tee time and you're playing in the 60s, or you could get tee time you're playing at 48 degrees.
Are you going to go back up there for the
I
championship?
definitely, I'll be there Thursday through Sunday for the tournament. I can't wait. Very excited. I'm actually excited to go there as a member, and I don't have any work to do.
Yeah.
The only times I've been there, you're running the merchandise tent for the club or doing this and that. And so it's going to be very refreshing just to go there. Well, you don't see the tournament. I know in the Ryder Cup, I made sure I saw the opening drive. And then I watched the last match come in on the last day because I was running the merchandise for the club. And most of them have been the same. You're doing that for the club, and you're not out on the course watching anything and on the range watching things. However, you're so proud to be there. It's really a cool experience. I remember in 2013, our pro shop was the Players Lounge, and my office is just a few steps above it, so they didn't take that one away from me. And I had in my office my dad's Masters jacket from 1948, decked out with a tie and stuff. And Adam Scott came in, was a good friend of the family. And I said, Adam, come on, I want to show you this. So he saw the Masters jacket that he had just won that year. And he touched it. I said, where's your Masters jacket? He said, it's right on this sofa. As I walk into my house, I touch it every time I go into my own home. He just touches it. He has it laid right over his sofa because it means so much. That jacket, will say, it's such a unique thing. So I'm honored to have the 48 one. I stole it from my dad. I went to visit him down in Mamaroneck, New York, and went up in our attic that we grew up in. I see, Jesus, his Masters jacket up there, the size 42 regular, by the way. His last one was 50 stout. That's why he wasn't the portly veteran when he won the Masters. But actually, I said, Dad, I'm going to take this up to Oak Hill and show it on during man. No, I want that jacket. You can't take it. Well, it's been up there for 20 years. He's never even seen it. So I snuck it out of the house anyway. And so for 2 weeks, I always showed it in my shop, the Masters jacket. I had the driver use when he won. So it's a very cool display. Stuff like that.
Regular persimmon driver.
Yes, which looked like a big head was as big as our thumb fingernail. They were so tiny back then.
Yeah,
It's incredible. It changes.
how did you become friends with Adam Scott, your family?
Well, Butch had was teaching him at the time.
That's right.
And so I've been around Adam for many, many years. Had dinner with him and stuff, and he's just a wonderful, wonderful guy. Just can't begin to tell you what a nice guy Adam Scott is. But it was just this. I know you won the Masters. Let me just show you what my dad's original jacket. So he was touching it, looking at it, and I said, where do you have yours? It's right on the sofa as I walk into my house. I get to touch it every day. Just kind of cool.
He's this goes back to Winged Foot. So one of our newer members, maybe the last 10 years, is a Japanese gentleman, and he owns the clothing company called Uniqlo.
Oh,
Friends with Adam Scott because of that. And
for
he
sure.
said the same thing you said. He couldn't be a nicer guy. Kill and so forth. We want to dive into that. But one thought occurred to me. You talked about how hard it is to win, I think, a little bit. I don't know who S.Y. No is, N-O-H, but he is 11 under at the Byron Nelson in the first round at the TPC Craig Ranch. You talk about how hard it is. Guy's 11 under after one round. What's going on out there?
Well, obviously, you have 11 under par, but the par fives or par fours. I think at that course they have two drivable par fours, and so par is kind of relative in that stage. However, you still have to shoot 11 under par. Everybody else has the same chance to do it.
Right.
These guys are the best players in the world, and I venture to say there's very little rough type stuff. So they'll usually fairways are 30, 35 yards wide, and then there's very little rough. Major championships, I know Oak Hill, they're 25 to 26 yards wide, and then it'll have 4 inches of rough. And so usually you get your little keister puckering off the tee more than a 7-iron into the green. So if you have to put it in the fairway for 72 holes, versus just hit a 7-iron on a green, it's a lot tougher to do that when you're penalized for missing the fairway. So rough is a huge deterrent to low score. Narrow fairways, low rough, huge deterrent. And other than that, I don't know what you can do to stop these great players. They're just so good. Everyone on tour is fantastic.
Did you play with Rory in the media day at the Oak Hill?
Well, it wasn't recently, 2013.
Oh,
and it was interesting. That's when he went with, I believe it was Nike, and he had to use this Nike red driver and their new ball, and he just couldn't get it in the air. It had such a low spin rate, and he missed the cut in the first one overseas and didn't play well. And this goes back to January, February of that year. So in the day when I played with him with PGA press day, I remember distinctly on our fifth hole, I said, well, how's this deal coming with your driver? He said, I think we have it figured out. I have a shaft with a low flex point that'll help get the ball in the air. And then he went to his drive. I went to my drive, and my mind said, I think we have this figured out. That was back in January, February, March, April, May, 5 or 6 months later, he thinks he has it figured out. But he was obligated to play that club. And so that kind of messed him up until he signed a contract. But he was obligated to play that club and that ball, and just was not a good club and ball for him.
What's the rough like? Because the rough in May at Winged Foot is worse than June. You lose a dozen balls in a round of golf in May coming up to an Open. Is it like that at Oak Hill?
Right now, I've chatted with the superintendent last week. The rough is 4 inches long, and they've just now have a growing season. He's already put fertilizer in it. And so if they get they're having warm weather right now. So for a couple of days, it'll grow. I would say by the time the tournament starts or end, it'll be between 4.5 inches, 5 inches. Kerry Haig, who runs the event, will ask them to cut it down, which is kind of normal. And so I don't know how much they'll shave it down. We had an evil superintendent. I say evil in a beautiful way, Dick Bader, back in 1980. And he had the rough at about 4.5 inches. And they told him, we got to cut this down like on Monday or Tuesday. And he was very prideful of the rough. And so he basically went in his workshop that night, his whole crew. Those rough mowers are gigantic machines. They'll go up and down the roughs on either side. And he turned all the mowers backwards. And so the PGA on Tuesday showed him mowing all the rough on all 18 holes, but it was fluffing it up. It didn't cut backwards. He fluffed it up. That was his place. And I didn't get this course in shape to tell you I'm going to cut the rough right now. So I'll never forget that as long as I live. So Jack Nicklaus was the only one who broke par that year. It's just funny how he said, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
It's funny. We talk about that in the Open that Mickelson should have won on 18 or whatever in 2006. Billy and I go back, and John Birdman, you probably know him, the caddy at Winged Foot, legendary John D'Andrea. Mickelson was just before that fairway bunker on 5 West. I say just before. He's about 155 in a semi ugly lie, and he took out a hybrid. So let's maybe say it was a 3 or 4 hybrid, whatever that hybrid was he carried. He was going to try to cut under it, right? And feather something over those bunkers onto 5 West, his third shot.
Yeah.
Hit it 10 feet. That rough being 3 inches gave him the thought that he might be able to pull the shot. Right, Billy? We talk about
Yeah.
it. You know,
Yeah,
sometimes
the rough for that
good.
high grabs the hosel and just shuts the club down, and you just don't get it in the air.
But if it was 6 inches, he wouldn't have even considered the shot.
No, he probably shouldn't have considered it at that time. But
Exactly, yeah.
part of his genius is he goes for stuff and doesn't care and accepts the consequential, which is
Yeah.
a wonderful way to be, by the way.
Yeah, you
He just-
can't change horses in midstream,
And nor would you want to change him because he's great.
right?
He's one of the best players on the Live Tour. I don't know if you know that.
I've heard that.
I hate to divert, but have you watched an event or been to an event or followed anything?
On the Live Tour?
Yes.
No, not at all. You know, it doesn't interest me from the standpoint, shotgun starts. You know, when I hear a report on it, they report on the team aspect. They really don't report on the individual. So not having watched it, and they have obviously some fantastic players, but of the 48 players, only about 12 of them are really fantastic players.
Mm-hmm.
But the 12 are really good.
They are good. But if they win, nobody seems, who cares?
Well, they care because they win a lot of money. So
Yeah.
it's a money grab. But right now, the American public hasn't grasped it per se because they're out of the limelight. And the golf is very good on the PGA Tour right now. Anyway, it's fantastic.
How good is Rahm and Scheffler? And now you got Homa and all these new guys. How about Eric Cole?
Yes.
You ever played
Out
with
of
Eric
nowhere.
Cole? You probably played with him up here, right?
No, I've never played with him. I know who he is.
Reminding him of the smart ass that I was. I said, "What's your best round?" I didn't know he was a pro.
Oh,
At 61, because Neil Christie just introduced him to me. And I met
boy.
his mother, Laura Ball, at Wingfoot in the 72 Open. She was a star then. But what about
I bet you did meet his mother.
I
People
was
don't know
very young then.
she's
I
a
was
beautiful
young.
woman.
I was 14 then. She was great. And she was one of the few people could hit it long, like Joanne Carner, too.
Yeah.
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 So what about these guys? Or Brandon Matthews? He's another guy that we've met over here. What about these guys, their chances to get into this game where guys are shooting 11 under?
Well, they don't shoot 11 under all the time. So you can only control what you shoot. You can't control what anybody else shoot. So back in the day when some guy would come to my dad, I got my son, and he wants to play the tour. What does he need to do? Well, it is anything that 4 straight 68s won't cure. And I think that has stood the test of time. You shoot 4 under every round. You're 16 under for the tournament. That seems to pay off every week.
Yeah, you're going to make
so
a living.
That's what these guys do. And I don't know how you can. The only defense on a course is wind and firm greens, as far as I'm concerned, with some rough. But without that, like Oak Hill will have everything will be very soft because of the weather conditions. But that also means that the rough is going to be very gluey. That it's going to be wet and the ball will tend to go down the bottom, and that makes it quite difficult.
And golf being golf, sometimes you miss everything by a half an inch. Some days they go in, and I'm sure that variable is much less for these guys than it is for guys like me. But there's a span of you shoot 81, you shoot 89. Some days it's there, some days it's not.
That's right. Sometimes you get the break and sometimes you do not. That's for sure. But in this case, they're going to be playing a great old school golf course. And I guarantee you every player will love the course because it's not like there's out of bounds and water everywhere. Like the 18th hole at Quail Hollow that they just played is such a hard hole that water off the tee is right there, and the bunkers and the trees on the right are, looked like the world's tightest golf hole. But what made it tight is how penal it was if you missed it. And Oak Hill has very few holes like that. So it's always been called, one of the fairest, hardest golf courses that they ever play. And they kind of like that. They like the fair part.
Are the greens Bowlish or undulating? I don't recall from my
Well,
playing.
we had a redo about 3 or 4 years ago, Andrew Green, and he basically put them back to almost original designs from Donald Ross. So over the years, because of the way they mow things, they become circles. And back in the day, they were more rectangular looking. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So now you're going to see more of that, and the bunkering is superb. Having been there 42 years as a head pro, it was unique for me to see it when they cut down a lot of trees a few years ago, because every hole was tree line. So now you tee off on number one, you can see number two. You know what I mean? Where before every hole had its own little amphitheater. So that part to me is more startling. But then you play the hole, and the hole is just stunning. So it was on farmland many years ago, and there were no trees.
Right.
And then this Dr. John R. Williams, an arborist, went all over the world and planted elms and oaks and firs. And over the years, 50, 60 years or so, all of a sudden you have these gigantic trees on every side of the fairway. And I was more used to that. That's what I know Oak Hill. And so when I played it the last couple of years, those trees weren't there. It was kind of startling. However, the holes themselves are equally spectacular. That part doesn't change.
I had sort of a similar thing early on. A local nursery was going out of business, and the board bought up all the trees and stuck them out there. So there were pine trees, and many of them have now been taken down over the last 15
Yeah, they
years.
infringe upon the fairways, the greens, and you can't grow grass under a tree. That's just the bottom line. So if you have trees, they need to be away from things if you want to have proper grass and proper grass on the greens and things. So I get it.
You have a tree at Oak Hill, that one tree like the one on 1 West on the left, or the one on 17 West to the right, that people just didn't want to cut down?
Well, you always have that. You're so used to. We have our Hill of Fame, which is the picture on the phone that you just sent me, with surrounded by trees everywhere. And on the left side, our left side of the green right now, they cut those down because the green couldn't get any sun. So those big trees are no longer there.
Wow.
The ones on the right are there because the sun sets on that side. The old line is, we'll hug them on the way down. You'd rather have a green that's perfect and a beautiful tree, and you can't grow grass on the green. That's just the bottom line. Well, the pine trees go all the way to the ground. You have an oak tree, the limbs are much higher once they become mature, so you can play a shot. The pine trees go all the way to the ground, and you just can't do anything. So those are good ones to get rid of.
So your best round at Winged Foot, remember, what was your best go around at Winged Foot, East or West, or any tee? I don't care.
So basically, I think my best rounds there were 67 on both courses back in the day. I think I was a +3 handicap, whatever that means.
Means you were really good.
Well, but I played with my dad when I was a +3, about 18 years old. We played the West course and the back tees, and I shot 70, and he shot 63. And so I saw him make 9 birdies, birdie half the holes. And I just remember saying to him as we walked off the 18th green, this is a true story, guys. I said, Dad, I work hard on my game. I'm +3 handicap. I just shot 2 under par on one of the hardest courses in the world. I just cannot see me shooting 63, making 9 birdies like you did. He said, I said, I don't get it. And he said, he had his arm around me as we walked to the pro stage. He said, Craig, it's very simple. He says, some people have it and some people don't. And basically he had it. He said, and then he segued into, you can't make a racehorse have a mule, but in your case, we'll make you the world's fastest mule. Now, I don't know if I liked it at the time, but I think it was accurate. Because there was no way I'm ever going to make.
I'll take it. Yeah.
But he wasn't always that good. And we heard from your brother about your namesake, Craig Wood, said to your father, what kind of golfer do you want to be? And he said, well, I want to be like you. And he said, with that swing of yours, you're not getting out of New Rochelle or Westchester County. So he had a hard conversation at that age in his life, and he was determined, right?
Yeah, well, Craig Wood changed his swing. Dad had a big swinging hook back then. He says, you'll never be any good hitting that shot. And he taught him how to hit a fade, and took him a while to do it, but that was the switch that made him a great golfer. Now he could hit it both ways, but he didn't have this vicious hook that was like a rattlesnake biting him in the ass every time it impacted. He knew it was going to happen when he walked up to the tee. That he couldn't control this hook. The old saying is, you can talk to fade, but a hook won't listen. So Dad had one of those non-listening hooks, and Craig Wood is the one who helped him become the great golfer that he became.
Yeah, and probably why he played the Augusta well too, because a lot of the trouble at Augusta's left, right?
You know, good players play well everywhere. It's just an interesting dynamic. When you're good, you're good. And, you know, Dad to this day has the course record at Seminole 60, the course record at both courses of Winged Foot 61s, course record at Quaker Ridge, which as you guys know is a great course, 61, still standing. Course record at Fisher's Island 63, I think. And so he obviously could
That's
play.
awesome.
So, and when he was a part-time tournament player, he could play. So the year he won the Masters, 1948, he lost the semifinals of PGA on the 37th hole. He would have played Ben Hogan in the finals as not a touring pro. And obviously at Winged Foot in 1959, he finished third, lost by 2 shots. He should have won the tournament as the host pro. But he could play. And he just happened to want to be he had a tough job. He had Winged Foot and Seminole. What a tough gig.
Take us through though, that your dad shooting 60, 61, 61, 63, all those low numbers. What goes on in a head of a professional, whether you're Ricky Fowler or you're, you know, John Rahm or you're Claude Harmon, when you're doing that? What goes on or is it just nothing and you just go to the next shot? What is it?
I would say there's absolutely nothing going on in the head. That they're just good golfers, and you know, you've played good rounds, you've hit good shots, and the difference is they know they're going to do it, and we hope we're going to do it. You know what I mean? So when we tee off, we hope we're going to have a good round. Well, they know they're going to have a good round. They know they're going to hit good shots, and it's just who they are. So anytime you have a great touring pro come play your course, he's going to shoot 66. That's what they do on a casual round. That's just the gig.
Yeah. Billy Regan saw Brian Harmon play Siwanoy as a youngster, shot 66. I saw Payne Stewart shoot 66 down in Miami Beach. I was lucky to play with. There was a casual round and there was no stress.
Nothing. That's just what they do. It's like that's just what they do. You just can't imagine it, but it's nothing. And so you're always surprised, like when Rory McIlroy misses a cut in the Masters. And he was playing super going into that, playing every practice round he played super. So those are the more surprising things, is when they don't shoot in the 60s, which is hard to do, but not when you're the best players in the world. That's what you get used to doing it, and that's just what you do.
So what do you think if you had 4 or 5 players and, you know, you're going to go to DraftKings and make a stupid bet head-to-head on 4 or 5 guys in the PGA at Oak Hill, who would you think is going to come down the Sunday stretch there?
Well, you definitely go with the people playing well now. So Scotty Scheffler, John Rahm, you know, those guys have seemingly don't have ebbs and flow to their games. They don't seem to have anything going wrong. But you just go by what's happening right now. That tends to usually a touring pro makes his living 2 or 3 weeks a year. Then he doesn't play well. Then another 2 or 3 weeks he plays well. So anybody who's been playing well for 2 weeks, you kind of look at him and you figure he's going to get a 3rd week. They can go for 3 weeks in a row. The John Rahms and Scotty Scheffler, they can go 4 or 5 weeks in a row. You know what I mean? So you look at someone who's been hot for a couple of weeks and you would bet on them, the outsider, that they're going to have another good week.
Yeah,
because they do.
There's no live players in this, or are there?
sure.
Oh, sure. I think the same amount they had at the Masters. 16, I think there are. All wonderful golfers. But there's pressure on them, but they're happy to be there. You know, they're back with their group, so to
Right.
speak. They're not an outcast. And
it's one off from the Masters, so they've already, broken
well,
that
they've
ice.
already done it, and a lot of the live players played very well at the Masters, by the way.
Yep.
Because they're good. And now, but they're back in their normal element. The other one's not their, they can say what they want. They're getting paid millions of dollars to play in an abnormal element.
Yep.
There's a few of them that I'd like to see on a frequent basis.
Oh, absolutely. They're just great players. There's not, and so they're missed, but they're not missed that much.
Well, that's sports.
You know, I like anything that calls attention to the game of golf, and I just think it's fun. You know, they have their PIP money that, they keep telling Rory McIlroy lost $3 million and because he didn't play in that last one. He didn't lose anything. He just didn't earn it.
That's right.
You know what I mean? He didn't have it. He had to give it back.
Right.
Right.
but because he didn't play in an elevated event, he wasn't going to share in whatever those funds were. But I like the fact you take care of yourself first and you worry about all that stuff second. And he had to be devastated when he missed the cut at the Masters. So he doesn't have to play if he doesn't want to. He's one of the great guys in golf.
Like Joe LaCava is now caddying, not for Tiger anymore. He moved on, right? Interesting.
Well, but that's because Tiger can't play for about another year, and Joe likes to be out there and do his thing. Tiger with his foot is just terrible.
Yeah,
You can see he can play, he can't walk.
that's right.
I
Iron
see him
game
hit
is
balls
perfect.
on the range at the Meadows, and he just stripes it.
If they made you the Ryder Cup captain today, could you get all of your players right out of Jupiter for a team of Ryder Cup players?
Well, I would say it would be a pretty good team because there are a lot of great players in this area. That's for sure. You have the courses, the weather, and the ocean, and the water. Scottsdale has a lot of pros are in Scottsdale, but doesn't have an ocean, but it does have the weather. And then you have the convenience of the airport getting places. But this is a fantastic place to be if you're a touring pro.
Yeah,
Well,
Medalist seems to attract a bunch of them.
Yeah, well, you have the Medalist, the Bears Club, Jordan's Place, that collects a lot of them. So you have about 3 or 4 courses that collect a lot of them. They're just fun. It's just fun seeing them out there working hard on their games and very dedicated. And so if you're a member at the club, just kind of fun watching them because they're freaking grinding it out. It's not a casual thing when they're during the season. It's really
Yeah,
something.
they play in the members at the Medalist, right? Isn't there a pro
Yeah,
flight?
yeah, they do. They play in the member guest,
Yeah.
member. Absolutely.
That's got to be so much fun for the members.
Billy, you're going to get 22 shots off of Ricky next week.
That's right.
I got a buddy down there, EC, said he came in the locker room one day after a great round with his partner and said to Ricky Fowler, Ricky, we might have you. We shot a gross 66 today. And Ricky said, sorry, I shot 64 on my own ball. Something like that. So
Yeah,
just to have that kind of,
he's
situation.
So Ricky's just a wonderful, wonderful guy. He's not a kid any longer. But he is really so. I was on the range with him last September, and I'd see him out there and chat with him. He's just a fun guy. And he's sending his video. I see him take video swings, send his video to someone. He's taking videos. And I said, Ricky, who are you sending the video to? He said, "Some to your brother Butch." Well, that was before he announced that he was going back to Butch. And so then we take a picture, a selfie together. Ricky sent it back to Butch. And Butch goes, "Who's that old guy next to you, Ricky?" So they started working in September. And his first tournament was in September out in Napa, and he finished 6th. And then 2 weeks later, he finished 2nd. And then the rest is history. So he's basically top 20 every time he plays. He went from 180th to 50th in the world. And he really hasn't hit his stride yet.
And you hear stories about how great he is with the fans, Arnold Palmer like, as far as the way he treats fans, especially the kids that admire him.
Yeah, I'll give you a story. At Oak Hill, he came in for the 2013 PGA the Monday before. And when he finished his round, he was on our upper putting green, putting with about 8 of my junior golfers for over an hour. And just putting around, having fun. If they made aces, he signed the ball and all that kind of stuff. So then I see him the next week, Tuesday, in the players' lounge. He goes, Craig, I have something here for your kids. So he goes in the locker room, has a big box of his hats, the Puma hats that he put in my office. He signed every one of them, 48 hats.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think just to do that is kind of special.
Yeah. How can you not root for a guy like that?
Yeah, and I guarantee you that he enjoyed putting with those kids as much as anything.
Oh yeah, he's a little kid at heart.
Yeah, but just to have the hats there and all that kind of stuff, real special guy. Just really enjoyed being around him. He's something.
The networks have wanted to do this for years, where they mic these guys up and try to have them go through a hole or so. I don't know about that, but I think it's good to know more about these guys and what they're thinking. Not everybody's.
It's good for us. I'm not sure it's good for them to break their stride, to do something. So when you're concentrating on something, it's hard. So these guys play 3 weeks in a row, not because of the physicality of the event, it's just the incredible concentration. And they're exhausted after 3 weeks mentally. So now if you have to walk down a fairway and chat with someone and be on point, say all the correct things and think about what to do, but then you have to hit a 2-iron over water with left to right wind, it's kind of nice for us. I think it's very hard on them.
It may pay dividends, with the fans. You get more fans that way. You get to know them a little better.
That would be the incredible dividend. But most of these guys are independent contractors. I'm not sure they care too much about that. When they hit when they peel a 2-iron around a corner about 10 feet, they're doing that for them.
Yeah,
But they think
true.
about anybody else.
Yeah.
But off the course, you learn more about them off the course. And I just gave you a beautiful off the course Ricky Fowler example. Now that same week, that same day, Tiger Woods came in with his caddy Stevie, and he had a cart. And he had 2 policemen with him. He played 18 holes at Oak Hill. Nobody could play the same hole. Phil Mickelson came in. He played by himself. Everybody, they losed him for autographs. And he said, well, put your stuff in the shop and I'll sign it and you can do it after. Then he did. He signed everything afterwards. No interaction with anybody.
Right.
And my other example, Ricky Fowler ended his day putting on the upper putting green with 8 of my juniors. Quite a dichotomy.
Yep.
But everybody has their own way of working. We know Tiger had his way. The blinders were on. And I've been around Tiger, at the Medalist and PGA Championship, where I've been around him a lot. He's just a real cool guy. I've always enjoyed Tiger. But when he's working, he's working. Well, there's going to be a whole cadre of the best players in the world who have never seen Oak Hill. So they're going to work much harder than those who have played it before because they have to learn the nuances of the course. But you don't realize they get there, maybe they putt for an hour, chip for an hour. Then they'll play 9 or 18 holes and they'll putt and chip for more time. So it isn't just the 5 hours on the round. And I think what they've done better over the years is not to burn themselves out practicing.
Yeah.
Where they practice for 7 and 8 hours and then you think you're going to compete in a major championship, which is really, these are major championships, are mental gymnastic type things of concentration at the highest level on very difficult golf courses. And there are 20 or 30 people who think they can win the tournament. So they're really on point mentally more than the others. And it's just hard. It wears on you mentally. Physically, they can do it. No problem.
Well, we have to ask you, what's your favorite hole at Wingfoot?
Yeah.
Oh, my favorite hole at Wingfoot. My God, how about 1 through 36?
That's the best answer yet. Yeah.
No, I mean that. Whenever I play with, the last time we were there, we played with my brothers. We played the East Course, and you just forget what a beautiful course that is. And I can't imagine being lucky enough to be a member of Wingfoot and playing both courses. Whatever. As a matter of fact, I am a member of Wingfoot.
Yes, you
they
are.
gave my brothers and I an honorary membership last year, which we were. It blew us away, actually. But so both courses, I couldn't tell you what my favorite hole is because there are too many of them. You know what I mean? They're all so awesome.
All right, we'll ask the different question we ask everybody. There's 8 par 3s. Take out 3 East. You can't use 3 East. It's taken. The 7 par 3s left. Which one would you take for a large sum of money to make a par or birdie? What's the one you would get guaranteed?
What's the one you bet somebody that you could par?
Yeah.
And I can't do 3 East.
Nope.
No. Everybody does 3 East.
Well, that would be the easiest of the group. I don't know. They're all pretty good there. I would have to probably be
the 13 East. Yeah.
13 East. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That'd be the next one.
Get the money. We're going to go to 13 East when we see Craig together, because we have a lesson with your brother Billy, the one-handed sand lesson.
Yeah, he promised to teach me how to get out of a bunker.
One-handed, yeah.
I'll take 2 hands, but any way out.
Well, I'll bet you, I guarantee you won't be able to do it one-handed. You can just go to the bank on that.
Your dad, tremendous teacher, example, and so forth. One thing that you remember forever, if you live to be 1,000, that your dad taught you about life or golf?
Oh, 100% is to have fun doing it. Just enjoy it. So whenever we played golf with him, we enjoyed it. If you gentlemen were members of Wingfoot back in the day, you got to play with him. You're playing one of the great golfers of all time, and he'd be the last one to hit off the first tee, and he'd be posing with a club down by his side, and you'd kind of start walking down the fairway tree. Bill, Bob, going back here, pull me down. I'm just gonna admire that shot forever. So you'd have to come and pull his club to help him walk down the fairway with you. So you're starting your round that way with him on a fun note. You're playing with one of the great golfers of all time. So those are the memories of Dad and how much he thoroughly enjoyed the game, thoroughly enjoyed every shot he hit, enjoyed his playing competitors, and just had a good time. And you imagine playing golf with him every day at Winged Foot. Anybody could play with him. That's the beauty of it. You sound like Southern boys, Billy and Bob.
Billy Bob.
We're about as southern as South Bronxville, New York.
That's right. Well, thank you for including me on the podcast, Herb. I enjoyed it. Brother Billy worked for me many years ago. We had an outing where there was no dress code. And so people were wearing short shorts and white socks up to their knees and T-shirts. And he's looking out over the putting green from our top steps of the pro shop. And he, with his jaw sticking out, Billy said, "It's the Toledo Mud Hens playing in Yankee Stadium today." I'll never forget that as long as I live.
Well, we have to ask you, what's your favorite hole at Winged Foot?
Yeah.
Oh, my favorite hole, Winged Foot. My God, how about 1 through 36?
Thanks for joining us
Casper.
today.
Billy
We
Harmon.
really appreciate your
Double
feedback.
Indemnity.
And please
Arky.
subscribe to the
Two
show
Outer.
and hit the
Claude
bell
Harmon.
icon so you get notified
Movie
of
Classics.
new episodes.
Mark Gable.
Hit them
Odd
hard
Job.
and hit them off.
Best 36 holes.